material that may be disturbing to some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised. A hair-raising 911 call.
Somebody came in the house and they were choking her.
And the brutal death of an unlikely suspect.
It was a gruesome scene.
I just look at them and I go, is my son dead? And they said yes.
Oh my God!
Throws investigators into a labyrinth of lies.
And as soon as we were able to look at him, we knew that that was going to be a key to this whole thing.
Masterminded by a bloodthirsty maniac.
It's inconceivable unless we're talking about a psychopath.
Stop! Close the door!
An unremarkable crime exposes a twisted trail of terror and unleashes the evils of Pandora's box.
Somebody came in the house and they tied her up and they were choking her. My mom got to the gun and shot the other one ran off. Okay, I'm gonna get the police right away. Okay.
The caller identifies himself as 11-year-old Bert Pittman. And in this quiet town of only 600 residents, a violent crime reported by a child is anything but ordinary.
Dispatch called just shortly after 7 p.m. that there had been a shooting at the Roberts house.
10 minutes later, Lieutenant Dennis Sessford with the Sac County Sheriff's Office arrives at the home of 35-year-old Tracey Richter Roberts, her husband Michael, and their 3 young children.
Well, I was met by Deputy Brusher.
What do we know so far?
Tracy, the homeowner, is in the kitchen. She's pretty upset.
Said that there was a shooting and there were 2 people that attacked her in small town Iowa. We don't have very many of that severity of crimes.
And the circumstances of this apparent home invasion turned deadly are puzzling.
When law enforcement searched Robert's house, there was no signs of forced entry. There were no signs of ransacking.
And nothing significant appears to be missing, leading investigators to believe the attack may have been personal.
There's a body upstairs in the master bedroom.
Any sign of the second attacker?
No, we cleared this place out. He's gone.
When we got to the master bedroom, there was a body on the floor. There appeared to be 2 bullet holes in the back of his head, so it was pretty obvious that he was dead. You could smell gunfire. It was heavy in the air. There was blood pool around him. It was a gruesome scene.
I'm Lieutenant Sessford. I'd like to talk to you about what happened here tonight.
Oh, okay.
Did notice some marks on her neck, like she had been strangled with something.
Can you tell me how you got the marks on your neck?
They choked me.
Sessford takes pictures of Tracy's neck injuries and asks her to piece together the events of the day leading up to the horrific assault.
A family friend, Dustin Weedy, came by that afternoon out of the blue. I didn't have time to chat. I was busy with my kids. My husband is on a business trip.
Earlier that night, Tracy puts the TV on for 11-year-old Bert and 3-year-old Noah so she can give 1-year-old May a bath.
Boys, are you being good in there?
Between 6 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., Tracy heard footsteps coming up the stairs while she was bathing the baby.
Maybe that's Daddy. Michael, is that you? Michael?
Tracy said that she peeked out of the bathroom and down the steps and heard 2 people and knew that it was not good.
That's not Daddy. Shh.
Tracy then took the baby down the hall into the room with the other 2 boys.
Honey, I want you to take your sister, okay? And you and your brother stay in here. Don't come out no matter what you hear, okay?
I won't, Mommy.
Okay, I love you so much. I love you all so much.
I love you too.
Stop! Close the door!
She was able to ward off the one attacker by using her body weight to slam him up against the wall. She went a few steps, and then one of them caught up with her again. Her glasses had gotten knocked off in the struggle. She was basically blind as a bat.
She was choked or strangled with the pantyhose to the point where she passed out. She woke up later, we don't know how much later, to the sounds of the two men trying to get into Bert's room.
So she got up and headed to the bedroom where she knew the gun safe was.
Come on.
She had to try, I think, 3 times before she could get that open. And during that, somebody was behind her with the pantyhose, trying to strangle her still. Got the Beretta out and put it over her shoulder, pulled the trigger. And then she sees somebody running from that area down the stairs.
And while she was sitting there, she heard breathing.
Don't move. Don't get up.
But Tracey's gun is now empty, so she grabs a second firearm from the safe.
Fires one final shot into the back of the attacker's head, killing him. At which time, she then went back to Bert's room, grabbed the children, and they went downstairs.
Do you remember what the intruders look like?
I just remember one being bigger than the other.
Tracey didn't know who it was, the person that she had shot.
Is there anyone you can think of that would want to hurt you?
Yes. My ex-husband, Dr. John Pittman.
We got into the relationship because you always look for family on these type of situations.
Though divorced for 5 years, Tracey claims her ex, the father of her oldest boy, Bert, is still extremely hostile.
He tried to take Bert away from me.
Bert Pittman was the son of Dr. John Pittman and Tracey. After the divorce, there was a nasty custody battle.
According to Tracey, the custody battle is still going on.
Dr. Pittman filed for a change of custody. He was on the verge of getting custody of Bert.
If something happened to me, my ex would get what he wants. Our son.
Lieutenant, there's a phone call you've got to take.
It's Michael Roberts, Tracey's Australian husband, who's out of town on a business trip in Minnesota.
I've been trying to reach my wife. What the hell is going on? Is my family all right?
Michael called home that evening to discover that no one was answering, so he called the next door neighbor. She told Michael what had happened next door.
Sessford asks if Tracey had any enemies, and Michael fires back right away.
And said, you know, make sure she tells you about the dentist in Chicago.
Sessford immediately asks the shaken woman about this new potential suspect.
His name is Dr. Joseph Laspisa. I used to work for him back in Chicago.
Tracey explains to Sessford that on August 11th, 1997, the dentist placed her under anesthesia for jaw surgery. But she woke up to a terrifying scene.
She woke up and he was masturbating.
What the hell? You sick son of a bitch.
She accused him of improper sexual activity, filed a complaint with the state licensing board and a lawsuit.
You're gonna regret this.
She got a $6,500 settlement and he lost his license for a few months.
Tracey also tells Sessford the case was settled on December 10th, 2001, just 3 days ago. As investigators continue processing the scene, an urgent dispatch describing the second intruder with what little info Tracey was able to provide is sent out to authorities in Iowa and the surrounding states. Satisfied with Tracey's statement, Sessford briefly talks to her 11-year-old son, Bert.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm okay.
So you called 911?
Yeah.
In my interview with Bert, he talks about pounding on the door, telling him to shut up in there, or you're next.
I heard my mom screaming and I got really scared.
Bert corroborated what his mom said happened. He did say that one of them opened the door at one point and stuck their head in, but he didn't recognize that person.
Thank you, Bert. You did a great job.
Meanwhile, it turns out the dead intruder lying in Tracey's bedroom is no stranger.
Medical examiner's investigator identified Dustin Weedy as the victim.
Isn't that the kid that Tracey said came by earlier this afternoon?
As the detective first suspected, this is no random crime. But who's really behind it and why will rock this community to its core. Tracey Richter is the victim of a deadly home invasion, during which he shot and killed one of two assailants in self-defense. The dead man has just been identified as the robber's 20-year-old family friend, Dustin Weedy.
Isn't that the kid that Tracey said came by earlier this afternoon?
I believe that most of the town people were surprised that Dustin was involved in an incident like this.
That's strange that she didn't recognize him.
Dustin Weedy was a 20-year-old boy, just graduated high school, wasn't thought of as being good or bad. He was just Dustin.
Around midnight, Tracey's husband Michael arrives home from his business trip. Sessford wastes no time in probing him about their relationship with the 20-year-old.
He's a neighborhood kid, helps out around here sometimes.
The Roberts knew Dustin through Dustin's mother, Mona. And Mona had been a realtor for the Roberts. Mona confided in Michael about issues she was having with Dustin, concerned about his future.
He has some issues.
Dustin had maybe an undiagnosed learning disability, most definitely was in special education.
Michael described Dustin as a lost soul. And, they were trying to help get him focused.
I wanted to help him out. So I had him help me with shredding papers, things like that.
But after a few weeks, it was clear the situation wasn't going to work.
Well, he told me that Tracey didn't feel comfortable having Dustin around. And the relationship with Dustin had cooled off.
As time went on, we drifted apart.
That same evening, 8 blocks away, Dustin's mother, Mona Weedy, gets an unexpected call.
Oh, hey, Brandon, what's up?
It was my nephew, Brandon. He says something really bad happened at the Roberts.
What? Oh, okay, I'm on my way. I heard that there was a shooting here. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
I'm assuming Michael shot Tracey or Tracey shot Michael. This is what my thought is.
But when Mona takes a closer look at the Roberts' driveway, she makes a shocking discovery.
Oh my God. That's my son's car.
I just look at them and I go, is my son here? And they said, yes. And I said, is he dead? And they said, yes.
Oh my God. I need to see him.
And they said, no, you can't. It's a crime scene. That didn't even register to me. I'm assuming my son was accidentally shot.
You can't go in there.
They go, no, you can't see him. Go home.
As the night comes to an end, Michael and Tracey try to make sense of the terrifying attack.
We'll get through this, all right?
I know. I love you so much.
You did what you had to do to protect our family.
It did put people on edge. It's not something that happens in your neighborhood every day, especially in a small small town when you're pretty close-knit and everybody knows everybody, and thought she was brave, thought she was protecting her family.
Tracey Richter was a hero, by all accounts.
The morning after the attack, Cessford pays Dustin's mother a visit.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I thought Dustin had one bullet hole in him. He was wounded. It was an accident.
But Cessford tells her the full story.
He starts telling me about my son. Dustin has 9 bullet holes in him.
According to Tracey Richter, Dustin attacked her.
What? That's crazy.
I was just told that my son attempted to kill the whole family. I'm going, what? It was just disbelief, you know, all the way around, because it was not Dustin's character.
Later that day, Cessford meets with a crime scene investigator at the vehicle yard where Dustin's car was towed, hoping its contents will hold some clues. As they take a closer look at the front passenger seat, they discover a striking piece of evidence.
In the front seat was this pink spiral notebook. It was written as a journal, you know, it was 19 years ago or whatever it was. A young man was born into a family, and it goes a little bit into that, and then it starts talking about Dr. Pittman.
To make a record of a mysterious fellow who asked me to work for him. John Pittman. It's Tracey's first husband.
Cessford is shocked and wonders how Dustin knows Tracey's ex-husband, John Pittman. But the more he reads, the more mystifying it gets.
Wants me to force his ex, TR, to kill her son, Bert, and commit suicide?
The journal suggests that Pittman, who lives in Virginia, may have hired Dustin to murder both Tracey and their son, Bert, and make it look like a murder-suicide.
As soon as we were able to look at that notebook, we knew that that was going to be a key to this whole thing.
Don't let this get to the press or anyone outside the department.
Nobody other than I and the lab crew knew the existence of this notebook.
You gotta make a call.
Cessford contacts Virginia police and asks them to conduct a thorough investigation into Tracey's ex.
That's right. Pittman, 1T.
While he waits for news, Cessford goes back to speak to Dustin's mother.
Did Dustin ever keep a journal at all?
A journal? No, never.
He hated to write, so the school system assumed that Dustin had learning disabilities.
Do you know John Pittman, doctor out of Virginia?
And the answer was absolutely not. He doesn't even know the man exists.
Cessford's last question is the most confounding.
Who is Dustin's friend?
Who do you think is the second intruder?
Dustin doesn't go anywhere. Dustin doesn't hang out with people. There is no one.
I don't know. Dustin didn't have any friends. That's why it was so nice when Michael Roberts spent some time with him.
The writing in the pink notebook is compared to a handwriting sample provided by Mona.
And it was obvious that it was Dustin's handwriting.
Cessford's next move is to call Tracey Richter down to the station for further questioning.
Any idea why Dustin would want to hurt you?
And her initial response was that, well, they had quit spending time with him.
I think he was angry.
They had befriended him. And when they didn't want to befriend him anymore, it was difficult for him to understand that they didn't want to be that close friends anymore.
He just wouldn't let go, and I think he snapped.
With everything he's been told about Dustin, he believes Tracey may be onto something. After all, it was Michael Roberts, not Tracey, who first reached out to Dustin Weedy. And that drives the detective to look more deeply into Tracey's second marriage.
Michael and Tracey met on the internet.
In late 1995, Michael, an Australian entrepreneur, communicates with Tracey online and via phone for a few months. Although they're on different sides of the world, their romance blossoms.
She flies over to Australia, and within 18 days of landing in Australia, they're married.
I love you. Will you marry me?
Oh my God, yes.
Michael moved to the States. Tracey and Michael lived in Chicago. They had 2 kids.
Then, in 1998, the family picked up and moved to early Iowa.
Michael and Tracey started a computer-based business. They operated out of the house.
Did you run the numbers on this account for last month?
I started working for them in their home-based business.
It seemed like Tracey and Michael had the perfect life, but behind closed doors, there was trouble in paradise.
What the hell is this?
As Lieutenant Dennis Sessford investigates the husband of home invasion victim Tracey Richter, he finds a report outlining a vicious domestic dispute between the two that occurred in 2000, just 1 year before the attack.
One evening, there was only Michael and myself in the office.
What the hell is this?
Tracey just storming in the back door, ranting and raving.
This says that our biggest client owes us $20,000 and they're bankrupt. How could you let this happen?
Just angry and mad at Michael. There was obviously trouble.
Mona, could you excuse us, please?
Michael, are you okay?
No, not really, no.
The next day, Michael actually tells me that Tracey filed a domestic abuse on him and he spent the evening in jail.
Hopefully you two can work it out.
He ended up being charged with the domestic, ended up being dismissed, the charges dismissed.
But the domestic dispute creates enough suspicion that Sessford adds Michael Roberts to his list of suspects.
Sessford.
Meanwhile, he finally gets the call he's been waiting for from the Virginia Sheriff's Office.
Yeah? What'd you get on Pittman?
The investigator says Pittman has a solid alibi and claims he's never heard of Dustin. With no further evidence linking either Roberts or Pittman directly to Dustin Weedy, the case begins to flounder. A year after the attack on Tracey Richter, Lieutenant Sessford retires and the investigation goes cold. But police sense they may finally get a break in the case the following year when they learn that the Roberts are separating.
I honestly believe that Michael knew what had happened, and we really thought when they went through their divorce that he would come forward.
Sheriff McClure, who takes over the case from Lieutenant Sessford after he retires, presses Michael for more information.
Come on, Michael, give me some. What really occurred that night?
I've already told you everything I know.
With Michael's lips still sealed, the investigation grinds to a halt once again. 4 more years pass. Then, in 2008, Special Agent Trent Valletta is assigned to Iowa's Division of Criminal Investigations Cold Case Unit. Valletta is combing through a bunch of cold cases when one in particular catches his eye. He quickly hones in on the numerous inconsistencies in Tracey's accounts of the night Dustin Weedy was killed.
I think amongst all the things that stuck out to him was the shooting. Her connecting with 9 out of 11 shots.
And hitting this kid in all these different places that are basically all money shots. That is in total contrast to the statement she gives about struggling on the ground.
And then he makes a shocking discovery about the dentist Michael Roberts believed was behind the attack on Tracey.
There was never any interview with him.
Valletta immediately contacts La Spisa for questioning.
Tell me, what happened between you and Tracey Richter in 1998?
I thought we were just having a good time until she ruined my life.
Let's start at the beginning. When did you two meet?
Sometime in 1996 at the hospital where I worked. She was employed by a radiologist there. We struck up a friendship.
And Tracey had inserted herself into his life as an assistant.
Lespisa explains that Tracey volunteered to help him organize the billing of his dentist's office, free of charge.
I took her up on her offer.
Eventually, Dr. Lespisa gives her more responsibility around the office.
Is it okay with you if I start a new billing process? It'll work much better, I promise.
Of course. You know I trust you.
She can electronically sign checks for him, which he approved, all of which she set up for him to do. That's where it begins.
That means a lot to me, especially coming from you.
The two grow closer, and in the spring of 1997, the relationship becomes intimate. Despite the fact that Tracey is now married to Michael Roberts.
Hey, can you stay late tonight?
I can stay for a little while, depending on what you need me to do.
They struck up a sexual relationship.
The affair continues. Then, on a balmy August evening in 1997, Tracey arrives at Lespisa's office with a very provocative proposition.
Do you know where we've never had sex?
She was the one that suggested that her and the dentist use the nitrous oxide in order to heighten their sexual pleasure.
She says, one of my dreams, one of my fantasies is to have sex in a dentist chair while we're kind of huffing a little bit of gas.
But Tracey has even more kinky fun in mind.
You want to take it to the next level?
Convincing the dentist to take an intravenous sedative.
You really are kinky, aren't you?
You have no idea.
Tracey administers enough medication to knock the doctor unconscious. 10 hours later, when Lespisa finally emerges from a drug-induced haze, Tracey's long gone. But what she leaves behind sends the dentist's life spiraling out of control.
She was playing him from day one.
When Dr. Joseph Lespisa awakens after being rendered unconscious by Tracey Richter during a sexual tryst, it's to his worst nightmare. The dentist finds a so-called contractual agreement from Tracey, stating he admits to sexually assaulting her while she was sedated.
After the doctor went under, she started taking pictures and wrote this note for him to sign, admitting that he did these things and asking her not to go to the authorities and agreeing to pay her a certain amount of money not to, because his professional license, was in jeopardy.
Desperate to keep his job and maintain his reputation, Lespisa caves.
I panicked. I didn't know what else to do.
And he ultimately signed it, and for a while was paying her extorted fees, and the terms and conditions of the extortion kept changing and becoming more.
There came a point where I had enough.
Lespisa stops all payments, infuriating Tracey.
What does she do next?
Ended up, she accused him of improper sexual activity, filed a complaint with the state licensing board and a lawsuit.
With new insight into Tracey's diabolical scheming, Valletta speaks to former prime suspect Dr. John Pittman about his ex-wife.
Tell me about when you first met Tracey.
It was great at first. She was my dream girl. Beautiful wedding, fantastic family.
According to Pittman, Tracey's perfect veneer soon cracks.
And she was staying out late at night. She was disappearing. The money from their bank account was disappearing.
I tried to talk to her about it, but there was no getting through to her. She has a very violent temper. I mean, she would just go ballistic at the drop of a hat.
Mounting marital tensions rise to boiling point in August of 1991 when a seemingly mundane dust-up
John! Get in here!
escalates into something far more sinister.
I told you to never bring your muddy shoes into my house!
Calm down. You're going crazy over shoes.
Crazy.
For God's sake!
I'll show you crazy!
And she goes in the bedroom, comes out with a gun, and points at him.
Whoa, Tracey, calm down. Look, you're going insane.
Don't tell me I'm insane! Don't you dare walk away from me!
He calls 911, law enforcement comes.
John and I were just arguing and it got out of hand. I was upset, but I was more upset with myself.
Tracey told law enforcement that they got in an altercation and that Tracey thought about taking her own life, and at the last second she decided not to and just fired the shot into the ceiling.
Tracey is eventually charged with illegal discharge of a firearm and is placed on probation for a year. She begs her husband's forgiveness and returns home to help raise their 1.5-year-old son, Bert.
He had the old Tracey back for that year that she's on probation. Model, wife again, things were great.
Until she started going off again and spending all of our money.
And after that, he left her.
Armed with a more detailed portrait of Tracey Richter's past and her volatile temperament, Valletta contacts the newly elected Sac County prosecutor, Ben Smith.
He sent me a picture of a crime scene photograph. Dustin on the floor, face down, pool of blood, and clearly 3 shots in the back of his head. He said Tracey claimed that Dustin was getting up before the last 2 shots were fired and did this in self-defense. He's like, think about that this weekend.
I don't need the weekend. There's no way this kid was standing up when she took these shots to his head.
Smith and Valletta suspect Tracey is the Black Widow at the center of this toxic web, but they have to find a way to prove it. As the pair pores over the list of people Tracey Richter may have confided in, they come across a new name, Mary Higgins.
I know Mary. I believe she is friends with Tracey Richter now that I think about it.
Smith and Valletta read over the statement Mary gave to police back in 2001 after Dustin's death.
You and Tracey Richter are good friends?
Yes, we are.
So when did you two meet?
Mary tells Sessford she met Tracey when the Roberts first moved to Early in 1998.
She described Tracey as being a breath of fresh air for the community of Early. They were buddies.
Did Tracey tell you what happened the night Dustin died?
She told me that she shot at someone trying to kill her. But that's all I know.
I came away with the feeling that she knew more than what she was telling me.
And like Sessford all those years ago, Valletta is also convinced Mary knows more, and he's determined to drag it out of her.
We have to talk to her again.
And I kept thinking to myself, Trent, she doesn't know anything. And Special Agent Valletta was convinced. He said, I'm gonna sit out in front of her house with my car until she talks to me.
Let me go with you.
So Smith and Valletta tracked down Mary.
What I wanted to do was check Mary Higgins off the list like we were checking other things off the list.
There's nothing to talk about.
I think there is, Mary. There's more to this case than people know about.
You mean like that pink notebook?
Years into their investigation of Dustin Weedy's death, Iowa authorities finally have a major break in the case.
You mean like that pink notebook?
A A journal in Dustin's handwriting that outlined explicit plans to commit the crime was found in his car during the initial investigation.
Don't let this get to the press or anyone outside the department.
We were missing the one piece that we needed, which was for Tracey to have talked to somebody about that pink spiral notebook.
What pink notebook are you referring to?
Tracey said that the police found a notebook in Dustin's car and that John Pittman was going to be arrested because of it.
How would Mary know these details that they've never released to the public? Well, Mary says, I know because Tracey told me.
In January of 2002, a month after the shooting, Tracey invites Mary over to catch up.
It's so good to see you, Tracey. How are you holding up?
Hanging in there. It's tough.
Mary didn't discuss anything having to do with the shooting. Figured that when Tracey's ready to talk about it, that she would talk about it. And Mary Higgins told us that Tracey just started in on it.
You know, Dustin had a pink notebook where he wrote about how John Pittman hired him to kill me.
What?
Tracey had told Mary that we were going to be arresting Dr. Pittman for the murder of Dustin Weedy.
Hopefully soon.
Good. He should pay for what he did.
And she provided information that was unmistakable. It was almost as if Tracey had read her the contents of that pink spiral notebook.
Mary initially doesn't question Tracey, but when months pass without John Pittman arrested, she presses her friend for more information.
So, why haven't they arrested your ex yet? Don't the police have Dustin's notebook?
You need to forget about that notebook, Mary, and never, ever mention it again.
And Mary was fearful for her family, rightly so. And Tracey's dangerous.
Is that clear?
Okay, sure.
The knowledge of that notebook, Tracey understood, should never have been known, and she probably should have never told Mary about it.
She told me never to mention it to anyone. I was scared.
Okay, but now you need to tell us everything.
Mary provided answers that we all knew that Tracey was responsible for the notebook, but Mary corroborated it.
And detectives can now surmise a more likely version of what happened the night Dustin Weedy was murdered. At Tracey's request, Dustin Weedy stops by the Roberts residence sometime in the early evening of December 13th, 2001.
We came to the conclusion that she had lured him to that house.
Have a seat.
Okay.
I want you to do something for me. I want you to help me write a story, okay?
Okay.
You know, I was asked several different times, did your son journal? I'm like, no, he doesn't like to write. He's not gonna sit and journal.
Write it exactly as I say it, okay, honey?
Okay.
I decided to keep a journal.
She made Dustin Weedy write all of that in there. How did she make Dustin Weedy do that? Well, by applying the oldest means possible, and that's her sexual appeal.
Good job. Now just leave the notebook here and follow me.
She had lured him upstairs. He was a 19-year-old with hormones raging.
What are we doing in here?
You'll see.
My feeling is that she got him into that bedroom and she'd start shooting.
And Tracey's claims of a struggle are disproved by her deadly aim, hitting Dustin 9 times out of 11 shots fired.
Nobody fires with that sort of precision under the circumstances she alleged existed. Her being hands tied with the lights off. Nobody shoots like that.
With Dustin bleeding out, detectives believe Tracey plants the manufactured evidence that she assumes will prove she acted in self-defense.
Tracey believed this journal, this pink spiral-bound notebook, was gonna get her off. Yeah, and Tracey believes this because that One entry points directly to Dr. Pittman having set this whole thing up.
It was clear that Tracey had murdered Dustin in order to get a leg up in a custody battle. Tracey was prepared to show up in the custody proceedings with a copy of the note that she left with allegations that Dr. John Pittman was behind the attack.
Once the notebook is planted in Dustin's car, Tracey completes the cover-up.
I always question the marks on Tracey's neck. They don't look like somebody that had been dragged to the hall with pantyhose.
There was never a second intruder. Dustin Weedy was invited into that house, and she murdered him. There were no intruders. This was a premeditated, planned murder on Tracey's part, 100%.
For investigators, the most diabolical part of the plot is that she committed murder with her children in the house.
What mother puts her kids in that kind of danger?
It's inconceivable unless we're talking about a psychopath.
They also believe Tracey had her own son lie to police.
When the policeman comes, it's very important that you tell it exactly as I told you, okay, honey?
Okay, Mom.
Now tell me again just how I told you.
My mom, somebody came in the house and they tied her up and they were choking her.
It was rehearsed. Everything that Bert said, you could tell that it was almost like he was following a script.
Okay, good job, honey. Now call 911.
On the strength of Smith and Valletta's findings, in particular Mary Higgins' statement, Detective Valletta gets an arrest warrant for Tracey Richter. And in July 2011, she's finally taken into custody.
Trent called, and he goes, Tracey was arrested today. And I was in complete shock. I never thought that day would come.
Tracey is charged with first-degree murder, and on November 7th, 2011, a jury unanimously finds her guilty, and the judge sentences her to life in prison.
You talk about a true evil woman, it's Tracey Richter. She would do anything for what she wants.
All you need to know is she shot somebody in the back of the head 3 times because she didn't want to lose a custody battle.
How can she befriend me and say, send your son down here, and then take his life? Like cold blood murder, just blow him away. That woman has no feelings, no emotions. She's put a lot of misery in our life, and I'm pretty sure she's getting what she deserves.